Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome back to High Vibes and a Mic. I am your host, Veronique. So today I speak with Kristen Strong. Kristen is a wife to a U.S. Air Force veteran, mama to 3 beloved adult kiddos, and an author who wants to help you be the kind of friend you want to have. She loves writing stories that help you make sense of your own and help you see your season with more expectation and less worry. Let's hear it from Kristen.
Hi, Kristen. How are you today?
I am so good, Veronique. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. I'm so happy to talk to you today because we're going to talk about something very important for women, okay? Our relationship, having friends, it's so important for us. And like we were saying earlier, we were talking, before we start recording, we were saying that men are not like us. They're very different. And sometimes we envy them, right?
Yes. Talk to their friends never, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Me, I need to know what my friends are doing every time, at every minute. And sometimes it's too much. Sometimes, we have other stuff to do. And sometimes, we shouldn't, it's good to have friendship, but sometimes it can take, a lot on you. And we're going to talk about that because I know you talk about that in your book. So your book is called, I like the title, by the way.
Thank you.
Your book is called Desperate Woman Seeks Friends. I also
Yes, ma'am.
like the cover, with that woman looking through glasses.
No, I know it. And I will tell you, when we were deciding on a cover, that's a whole process. And I was like, oh gosh, do you think it looks like she's spying too much? And my daughter, who's, Gen Z, she's like, well, Mom, we are spying these days.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, especially through digital online. You're right. So anyway, I love it. I think the book is a little sassy and I think the cover reflects that. So
I know. It's true that we're spying because, for instance, one of my friends, she just went on vacation a week ago to Costa Rica. And I'm like, why the pictures? Why the pictures? How come you're not posting any pictures? I want to know what you're doing. And she's like, I'm sorry. I don't have my phone with me all the time. I'm going to post a picture later. I'm like, post the pictures.
yeah,
I like to spy on my friends.
we want to go along with them.
Yes. So you are an Air Force wife. How do you say that? I'm sorry. You are
Yes, no, you
military
said it.
wife. Sorry, military
Yes,
wife.
no, well, and you were right on both accounts. Now, my husband has retired from active duty, but
You were.
I was for almost 20 years an Air Force wife, a military wife. So yes, that
So
is
it
correct.
means that you were moving a lot from base
Yes.
to base in the country.
Yes, I was. And we did one overseas assignment. It was still in the country. It was to Hawaii, but
Nice.
it was considered outside the continental US. But
Yeah.
it was quite the difference from how I grew up. I grew up in Oklahoma in Osage County, and actually our street name was called O'Neill Lane. And my last name was O'Neill, and everybody's last name on O'Neill Lane was O'Neill. So
Really?
it was quite the change. Yeah, it really was nice. A large extended family and, a deep well of familiarity, deep roots. But it was quite the change to go from that to meeting and marrying my husband and moving around, where it was a lot of change and therefore having to make friends over and over again.
I know. So how old were you when you got married and you start moving? Because it can also depend what age. If you start very young, you don't really know sometimes how to make new friends. When you're older, maybe it can get better. So what age were you when you started moving around,
Yeah, you're exactly right. So I was 21. We got married. We met in college, and I only went to college 50 miles away. And so a lot of which I loved my university. I loved it so much, but a lot of high school friends and family members went to the same college. So we got married after my junior year of college and then moved. And so, yeah, that was a stark hard realization for me is that I did not know how to make friends. They just kind of had, by and large, always been there, and so learning to have to make friends and what all that takes, namely kind of putting yourself out there and introducing yourselves and going first up to somebody and trying to strike up a conversation. That is hard. That is a hard thing, especially when you don't have a history of having to do that.
Yeah, because if you were in that nice cocoon with your family,
Exactly,
the street name, and all the people in the same environment. In 21, I think you're still like very young, like a baby still, right? And
I was a baby.
even if you're married and everything, it's the age usually where you start sometimes you're moving from home and all your friends are from high school or middle school, and you have to learn, you have to meet new people. So I can completely imagine how stressful it could be for you. So what did really motivate you to write that book?
Well, I would say it was really the fact that friendship just is a theme that has followed me. It seems like, and just when I guess I've been interested, and probably because I was really just really bad at making friends as a 21-year-old. What I know now is that friendship is an art and a skill. We don't always think of it like that because we see other people, they seem to have their people and have it figured out. But for most of us, like I wasn't born with a natural ability to really be great at friendship, like just to be great at putting myself out there. But I learned most of us are that way. We just learned it as we went along. And so I would say that's why I wrote the book, is because I thought, as a 21-year-old, boy, it sure would be great to have a book to tell me all these things. And now it's kind of fun that I feel like I've written that book to help the woman who is struggling to find friends. Maybe she's not sure how to do it, or maybe she feels she is doing all the right things and still coming up empty. I want to encourage her in that process.
Yeah, because in that process, sometimes you can also be rejected. You talk about that. You mentioned the
Yeah.
sting of rejection in friendship. So according to you, how can women identify when it's time to let go, or instead of keep trying to be friends with someone? What's the red flag for you?
Yes, there. Well, isn't that true? Because and listen, I'm one that can hang on and keep trying, or especially in my younger years, not so much now, but I used to kind of have a needy side to my personality where I think what if when I finally had success in making a friend, I would just kind of throw all my efforts to that person and overwhelm them a little bit. So that's, something. So that is in my history. Now I have since, become a better friend in that regard. But it's such a good question you ask, Veronique, because it is, you do want to put your efforts. Making friends involves work, and involves effort, intentionality, but you want to put those in places where you feel like you're getting something out of it. And it's true. If you are finding yourself in a friendship that you are the one pretty much always making the plans, always checking in first to see how the other one's doing, or the other one is canceling here and there, that it's hard to kind of look at that honestly and go, you know what, I think this is just not meant to be. But what helps me be able to do that is know, you know what, it is a form of rejection. And yes, all rejections sting, from the minor to the certainly the majors. But if I am not supposed to be in community with this person, if we're not supposed to share a friendship, then for whatever reason, that person it's just not in my best interest to do so. And remembering that as I pivot my attentions towards those who are interested in a friendship with me is just a much better use of my time. Because, I like to say friendship takes two yeses. One
Yeah.
person cannot do the work of two people. Again, I've tried before, but that just goes nowhere. And so when you are sensing that happening, it's probably time to look elsewhere. Now, having said that, there are seasons where you are going to be real busy, or maybe you're just enduring an intense season of grief and loss, and you are not able to reciprocate. You can maybe only do 10% or 20%, and the other person's doing 80. And that's going to happen, as it's going to happen for the friend as well. I mean, even stuff that wasn't tragic. Like I remember when I was a mom of three kids who were not yet driving, but in a lot of activities. So, I felt like my address was the minivan.
Yes.
I could not, I wasn't socializing much during that time just because I was really busy. I was working during the day and running everywhere after the school hours. And my friend Allie, boy, she just, if we still got together, but she initiated and made the reservation or reached out to me, whatever it was, every single time during that period of time, because she was a parenting season ahead of me, and she could look ahead and go, Kristen's busy now, but it won't be that way forever. And it's true. Once things slowed down a little bit, I did pick up the reins and start giving more. So I think that the thing to consider too is, if a friendship is suddenly lopsided and is staying that way, or it never really became
Yeah.
anything that was reciprocated, then it's time to pivot your attention elsewhere. But also have grace. If somebody's just going through a hard time and you are having to put in more effort, for a season, that's being a good friend too.
Yeah, I have two examples like that in my life right now, and I think that's why I'm giving them some space.
Yeah.
Also, I think when I make myself too available, some people can take advantage also of it. They're like,
Yes.
okay, oh, she's going to be there. So, I don't need to answer her text right now. I don't need to call her right now. And one of my friends, she lost her house in a fire, two years ago. And for the whole year, of course, she was traumatized. She didn't want to come for like birthday parties or anything. So I let her be. And another one, I think she lost her job. We didn't talk for a while. So the one who lost the house in the fire, I never gave up because I was thinking she really needs my help. I need to really comfort her. So I give her a lot of space. But the
Hmm.
other one who lost her job, I was like, okay, I'm just not going to make myself available anymore because it was really only me calling and only me doing everything. And I noticed since I just gave her some space, now she's coming back little by little.
Hmm. Yeah.
She's
Well,
coming
and
back on her
that's,
own.
yeah, you volleyed the ball into her court, and so she's going to volley it back. And there's nothing wrong with that, with saying, or kind of holding this posture of relaxed camaraderie, where you're like, your move next. And so if
Mhm.
they then take you up on it, and sometimes they do, when
Yeah.
when they're able to. But I love that. I love that, Veronica. I think that's being very wise.
Yeah. Sometimes people need space. So
Yeah.
in your book, you talk also about setting boundaries. So what are you and managing differences? So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, well, boundaries, I talk about how it's our friend, sometimes, especially if somebody maybe is in our life who is just bringing a lot of toxic behavior, and it is okay to put up a boundary when that happens, and I mean, like, genuinely toxic behavior, not just, maybe has a personality quirk here and there, but like, but they are our friends. So I talk about how boundaries are our friends, and we often recognize, I think, when we need to put up a boundary with somebody else, I think we struggle more sometimes with the fact that maybe somebody else wants to put up a boundary with us. Like I talked about in the beginning, as a newlywed, I could overwhelm friends and they would put up a boundary. But that's okay too. What I've come to think about boundaries is it's just simply a way to give information, about how available we are to somebody or how available somebody is to us. Boundaries, if people, generally people don't bristle at them. If they bristle at them, then that boundary was needed. So yeah, so it's just a tool, I believe, that is important in our friendships, with just being respectful and maintaining just that relaxed camaraderie that I talked about too.
Do you know? Because that's something I really don't know how to do. Even now at my age, I don't know how to do it. Do you know how to break up with a friend? Because sometimes breaking up is like breaking up with a man. It's the same thing, like with love. Because I really love my friends.
Yes, yes, no,
I don't know
I,
how to do that.
I know. That's tricky, and I think that involves just a lot of wisdom and discernment, and prayer. If you're a believing person,
Mhm.
rely on God's help with that too, to know when.
Me
I
too.
can I can give a story that I think kind of helps a little bit with that.
Yeah.
So there was a time a while back where I sensed a friend was, in my life. We were doing great, but then she just started demanding more and more time from me. So she was kind of the needy one at that point. And it was one of those things, we were in different life stages. And it was like it was like where I could not genuinely get together all that often, because I was kind of in that same busy season of life between work and children. We did get together. I just couldn't do it, every week,
Yeah.
and she wanted to every week. And it
Okay.
got to be one of those things where the more, she'd extend an invite and I couldn't make it work, she'd extend three more my way. And, I just started to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And again, she's a great gal, very kind. It was just starting to feel like she had these expectations of me that I was not able to meet. And so I remember one time, it was 11 o'clock on a Friday. I was actually running on my treadmill at the time, and she called and asked if she could come over. And I said, well, now's not a great time. with what I got going on here, can next week. And she was like, no, it's really important, Kristen. Can I come over right now? And so I was like, well, sure. Because I thought maybe there's like an emergency or, she got bad news or something. So she came in, I invited her to sit on my sofa, and she just kind of launched into all the ways I was disappointing her.
My
and
God.
and then I know. So it was one of those things where I had clarity from the Holy Spirit. I felt like from God that said like I needed to, like, this was not sustainable. And so, but the words I said to her were, I appreciate you sharing this with me. I certainly never meant to hurt you, because that was part of the conversation, how I'd hurt her, how I'd let her down, et cetera, et cetera. I certainly don't mean to do that, but I'm sorry that I have. But I believe you want more from me than I am capable of giving. And I just sort of let that sit there. And she kind of shook her head and said, okay. And pretty much the friendship kind of ended at that point. So I think what helps in a friendship breakup, when you are the one that feels the need to do the breaking up, is to make it about you, not about the other person. That's what I did. I said, this is about, you want more from me than I'm able to give, because that was 100% true. Yeah. Now, the fact was she was asking way too much. It was about her too. But in that moment, the kind thing I think to do, the gracious thing, is to get that message across while using language that, is about you. And so that is kind of how I've handled that in my own life.
Yeah. So two things. First of all, I think because what you just said happened to me like twice already. So I think this kind of friends, sometimes they don't have a lot going on in their lives at that time, and they just obsess on you.
Yeah.
Because you're the best thing they have at the moment, and they just want to be with you, hang out with you. And sometimes they love also your family or what's going on, your dynamic, you're very attractive at that time, and they just want to be with you. And if you cannot give them everything they want, they get mad. So that happened with friends. And second of all, when I want to break up with a friend, because I don't know how to do it, like you said, I don't know how to do that. We talk about faith. Usually I just pray and I say, God, you need to remove this person from my life. And most of the time, all the time, it happens very quickly. We just get into a stupid argument that I didn't even look for. Usually the person is just mad at me for something stupid, and I don't try to really make it up.
Right.
And I'm like,
right. It just happens. Yeah.
And we just don't talk anymore. But I know you talk about faith and about Jesus, faith, and friendship. So how does Jesus, help you with this kind of situation, with friendship?
Yes. Well, I think you're exactly right. Just asking the Lord's help and maneuvering those choppy waters, that's imperative. But I guess Jesus helps me best by being the example of a friend I want to be, because there were times he showed tremendous grace to people. I mean, Judas was one of his disciples who went down in infamy for his betrayal of Jesus. And then also, so Jesus, though, loved him, though, anyway, even though he knew what was, his Judas's part in what was going to happen. So modeling that and having grace with my friends. However, the fact that Jesus also did not just put up with everything that people tried to throw at him. I mean, he had people try to seriously harm him or kill him, throw him off a cliff, and he would just get out of that situation because that was, it wasn't his time yet and he was putting up boundaries at that point, basically, and what was, what kind of behavior he was going to accept and not accept. And along the same lines, Jesus had his 12 disciples, and, he didn't just stand at the city gates and holler, the first 12 people to come up are my disciples. He intentionally sought them out and put forth effort in building those relationships and looking to, for his father's guidance on who to have. So I think it is okay for us to do the same thing. While we are to be gracious in our friendships, we don't need to cut somebody out over, garden variety mistakes. I know Pope Francis had said at one point, I heard my friend Carrie quoted this, we live in a throwaway culture, and sometimes that works with friendships. We get annoyed over one garden variety thing and we just dump the friendship. Maybe the grass looks greener over here. So we don't want to do that. But at the same time, we don't need to put up with garbage, from people. And it's okay to, if a friendship, the expression is friendship, and I don't remember who said it originally, but we're friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Not all friendships are for a lifetime. And so if we part ways, we part ways. But yeah, I would say that's how Jesus has helped me the most, is looking to him as to how to be a good friend. And also in working on my friendship with Jesus makes me a better friend to my friends, I believe, as well. Because when I go to him for, like you were talking about, through the prayer and just direction and discernment, when I go to him first, and instead of maybe demanding everything from my friends, and that's why, like you talked about as well, I think it's great to have more than one good friend, because you don't need 100, you don't even need 10, you don't even need, you just need like 2 or 3, really. 2, 3, 4. Then you're not overwhelming the one. But going to Jesus first with whatever is bothering me, it means that I am better situated to not overwhelm my friends.
Yeah, when you say, friends are for a season or forever, it reminds me of the first time I discovered Joel Osteen. I guess you know him.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, I love him. And I read one of his books, and at that time I was really not in conflict, but I had this friend also very needy, was asking a lot from me. I just got married, and I was going back to school, so I was really busy. And this person thought we were still going to do the same thing as before, but was really busy. And that friend, I had him since elementary school, and I was already in my 20s, so we were really tight. And I read this passage from Joel Osteen saying, friends are not for forever, and you don't have to take everybody with you. When I read that, you don't have to take everybody with you, for your future. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can take him with me this quiet anymore. So
yes,
we're just like a light bulb.
Yes. Well, in my research for Desperate Woman Seeks Friends, I read a beautiful book by Drew Hunter called Made for Friendship. And in there, he has this great line that's like, that is true. He says, if we were meant to be friends with the same people forever and ever, we'd all just be friends with the people we met in nursery school or kindergarten, and most of us, some of us maybe, but most of us are not. So we pick up new friends along the way and say goodbye to friends along the way as well.
I think I kept a lot of friends from childhood because of the internet, because of Facebook, Instagram, and things like that. Because we don't talk every day on the phone. I don't see them, I see them maybe once every 5 years when I go back to France.
Yes,
because that's where I grew up. But without the all those apps, we wouldn't be in contact anymore. So you cannot keep everybody with you. So what do you think of, how did you manage, between, because you moved a lot, the season of loneliness when you didn't have a new friend yet, and you're maybe waiting to meet somebody new?
Well,
were you like praying more, or what did you do?
Yes, I would say definitely with time. I probably wasn't praying as much as I should have in the beginning, but with time, I was, like, oh, please, Lord. When I think about when we moved to Hawaii, I had this idea in my head, like, we're going to be on this little island, how many people will there be to choose from to even have a friend? And of course there were lots, but I did pray. And I think when you pray specifically, it's helpful. Like, I stopped praying, Lord, give me friends. I would pray, Lord, open my eyes to somebody this week who I can see and make a connection with. And may their heart also be interested in making a connection with me. And God's not a genie in a bottle. It's not always that it happened that week, but it did happen. And I was going to mention to you that the title of my book, Desperate Woman Seeks Friends. So that actually comes from a time where I was, having a real hard time, because I was doing what I felt like were all the right things, to make friends. And it was just, it was not happening. I felt like I could not pay a person to be my friend. And so I told my husband, and this was 2005. So again, before phones are as they are today. So before social media, I should say. And I told my husband one day, I'm going to get a poster board and I'm going to write on it, desperate woman seeks friends. And I'm going to hold it in the yard because maybe somebody will drive by who's interested, like I did feel desperate, like I knew I needed them, and I wanted to channel that desperation in a healthy way. So I never actually made the sign, but like I really was this close to doing it. But a little bit after that, I met a friend at the park, my friend Sherry. We just kept showing up at the park at the same time together with our little girls. And we ended up striking up a conversation and making friends. So I think that is just the encouragement. I have had such seasons where I was so discouraged in making friends. Like it just wasn't, I wasn't connecting, with folks. But the Lord was always faithful to bring me somebody. I just had to not give up in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. But the things makes me a bit, I'm a bit surprised because I have another friend. She's also a military wife like you.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a lot of activities between the wives, all the
Yes.
military wives. So I feel that she's moving, not a lot, but she's moving maybe like every 5 years, I think. And I see that she has a lot of friends. How come you didn't connect with the other wives from the
Yes.
military?
Well, often I would, especially the years we lived on base. I felt like it was easier then to really connect because that's true. Military spouses, we kind of skip the small talk and there's a short circuit or a short fast track, I guess I should say, to friendship where we connect faster. But for whatever reason, this time I would go to mom events and I just couldn't, it seemed like most of the people had been there for a while. And so they had kind of found their people,
Yeah.
We lived off base in a neighborhood where there were some military around, but there were also a lot of civilians. And there was this idea that they already had their friends, or they would find out I was military and be like, oh, you're out of here soon, so I'm not going to invest in you. There's that as well.
That's
So
true.
yeah, that was just one particular assignment. I mean, honestly, I can look back now and think the Lord was teaching me through it, perseverance. I mean, it gave me, a title for a book. so there is that. But yeah, you're right. Usually with military folks, I can make friends pretty quickly, but the circumstances were such that at that point in time, it just didn't happen right away.
So how long did he last? 10 years, 20 years? The whole time your husband was in the military?
He was he's been in 26 years and we were together for almost we were together 19, 20, almost 20 years of that time.
So 20 years of that stress of knowing, am I going to make a friend? Or
Yes.
this is my friend.
Yeah.
Or
Am I
going to
not?
move?
Yes. And of course, I carried some friends with me, and we would talk on the phone or text as well. But, you need in-person friends. And so, yeah, that was always the struggle, is to find your new in-person friends.
So you have a grown-up daughter. So I guess you giving her a lot of advice, I guess, about how to make friends, or so how do you navigate that with her? The book
Yeah.
also.
Well, yes.
Has she read your book?
No, she hasn't.
She
She
missed it.
has. Listen, she's in college. She's real busy. So,
Okay.
reading mom's book is maybe not at the top of her list of to-dos. However, having said that, I did write a chapter about her high school experience with her blessing. And so she has read that and signed off on that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, with our kids, so my daughter, she's a junior at Texas A&M right now. But in high school, boy, she had a really hard time making friends. It seemed like she did make friends through she was a tennis player, and she did make friends through her club tennis team. But in high school, it was really difficult. She had a group of friends, and they would be as a friend should, but then they would just turn cold and start ignoring her. And so then she'd invest in other people and they'd accuse her of being, a snob, or you think you're too good for us, and then just kind of a lack of maybe loyalty or faithfulness, really. On a Monday, oh yeah, let's get together this weekend. That sounds great. And then on a Friday, suddenly, a better option came up for the other friend. So she just never really found her people. So, however, when she went to college, she did. She found friends left, right, and center, all over the place. And that's what we encouraged her with. It was during those high school years. Like, listen, you know what? Sometimes people find their friends in high school. Sometimes they find them in college. And like she has said, well, I probably don't want to peak in high school anyway. We're like, no, you don't want to peak in high school. but we encouraged her at the time too by just saying, you just keep trying, and eventually the effort you put in will gain a reward. And that's what we saw in college. She did not just stay holed up in her dorm room. She went out and about and introduced herself to people, to the kids sitting alone in the cafeteria. She said hello to them and struck up conversation sometimes, and a friendship. And so that's the gift of hard seasons of friendship. You just faithfully keep at it, and eventually that fruit will come. You learn the skills that you need to get the fruit. And the thing is, though, like I call that chapter, don't discount the fertilizer years. And that's because we like to say her high school years had a lot of crap.
I know.
But the thing is that fertilizer, just like fertilizer in our fields and our crops, it's what feeds the nutrients to the crops so they grow. And there were nutrients still to be found in those for her. And so we just did our best at the time to make sure she felt loved and accepted at home, and made home a safe place for her, and a place where she could feel like she could be herself during those times, and just encouraged her also in the fact that, Jesus was on the outside as well. He knew what it was to be out on the outside, not invited to the tables of, the quote unquote, cool people at the time.
Yeah.
And, and so her faith grew during that time as well, relying on him, because she understood that he understood what she was feeling and what she was going through.
Yeah. It's so hard for them because I have my daughter is almost 13, so she's in middle school. And right now she's been she's in a little cocoon with her little friends, It's already a lot of drama for a 13-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's too much.
Yeah.
But in 2 years, she's going to go to high school, not in the same city, in another city. So it's going to be all new people. And I'm already preparing her. She makes friends kind of easily, but I'm already preparing her mentally, saying, it's going to be different. You're going to go to a different school with new people. So get ready to fight.
Yes. Like there is a nature, there's a component of it that feels like you are having to fight for your people, to find your people. You have to just put in the work and the effort and the intentionality, which could feel like a fight when you're not getting the success you want. But I would say your daughter is set up well. If she knows what it is to make good friends, she can take those habits and what she's learned with her to the new school.
So about your book, so you talk about your own experience, you talk about faith, and you're giving advice maybe to young people. What else in the book that can, motivate us to go in there and see what's going on?
Well, I like to think it's just something that gives you insight into the pitfalls of friendship, but also the possibilities, because my heart is really for the gal who hears this and goes, this is all fantastic and this is wonderful, but I've tried and this is not, I'm not meant to have friends. Women are tricky, and I just feel like I'm the exception to the rule. And I would say you are not the exception to the rule. If, Jesus walked this planet with friends, which he did, it is God's will for us to do the same. And that includes you as well. And it is possible. Like, we need you in our lives. We need you in the game. Don't give up, and just keep trying for the friends, the friends that you need.
Yeah, it's so important.
It is.
Like we said, earlier, men don't understand that sometimes. When I tell my husband about stories, my friend is like, why is that so important for you? I'm like, you don't understand. They're like my sisters. And I don't have I have one brother. I'm like, you don't understand. They're like my sisters, And I had one friend, I would say she was like one of my soulmates. I can tell you that. We don't talk anymore because we had a big fallout 15 years ago. But we were friends for like 25 years. And then something happened in our lives when we had to break up. And it just broke my heart. She really broke my heart. But friendship is it's so important, I think.
Yeah. And you're not alone there. Like, those friendship breakups like that happen after a decade of friendship, those are really painful. Yeah. And I do, talk in the book about that as well. I have a chapter called When a Friendship Ends Without Your Say So, but also just, a lot of general thoughts on, the friendship breakups, because they are so very hard, but I can tell you they are so very common, sadly.
I think I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't for like a year. a whole
Yeah.
year. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, we're not friends anymore. Why?
Yeah, well, like you said, it can hurt. Like, I've lost some friendships that hurt worse than, a high school boyfriend or
I know.
a college.
Yeah.
It's painful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they
Especially
are
when,
like sisters.
especially when something happened funny, you're like, oh, she would have loved that. I would have called her and tell her, oh, you know what
Yes.
happened? And you can't.
Yes, I know. That is so true. That is so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add? Maybe I didn't ask about the book or about, advices.
Let me think. I mean, I'm really proud of this book. It's been years in the writing, but a lifetime in the living and learning that went into it. And I do think it's just a great resource for helping you, just learn how to be a good friend to yourself so you bring your best self to others, but
That's
then
good.
how to be a great friend to others. And of course, as a woman of faith, I talk in there about how Jesus is our friend who never fails us, because people will fail us, but Jesus never will. And so I think it, can encourage anybody, no matter what season of friendship you find yourself in.
And we can buy the book anywhere. We can buy it on Amazon. Is it on Audible also? Can we listen to it?
Yes, Audible. You'll hear me in my Oklahoma accent reading it.
It's super
So
fucking cool.
yeah, it's on Audible. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, Christian Book, wherever you like to buy books. You can also learn about it from my website, which is KristenStrong.com, and my first name is Kristen strong.com. And you can find the books tab and find it under there and read more about it as well.
Cool. I will add everything on the show notes, and people can just click on it and go directly to website and go on Amazon, order the book. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Christine, for the interview. That's something that everybody needed to hear, about friendship, womanhood,
Yeah,
everything, you
right.
need in this life.
Being a woman in this world. Yes. Well,
So
thank
hard.
you. Thank you, Veronique. It was a delight to chat with you.
I loved it. Thank you, Christine, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.